Let's look at the benefits of rubrics for students. The overall benefit of teachers using rubrics to grade assignments for students is that it makes the expectations for each assignment very clear and front-loaded for students, so that they'll know exactly what the teacher is looking for in a particular assignment. Now, we are making an assumption here, basically from here on throughout the course, unless I provide a specific example otherwise, which is that the instructor has created a very thorough rubric and uses the criterion and grading levels exclusively when evaluating every student's submission for that particular assignment. That's the main benefit for students when teachers use rubrics for their assignments. Here are some other benefits though. There is consistency in grading for students. This allows for non-prejudicial grading. Remember the video that we watched of Mr. D grading his papers and using, let's just say, very subjective information and criteria for grading his papers and so on? We don't want that kind of grading. And so if the teacher is truly guiding their scoring process by being laser focused on each criterion and each level of proficiency within that criterion, then every student submission should be graded by the exact same standards. This eliminates hearing about students comparing grades and questioning why one person got a certain grade and another person got a different grade when they see their submissions being exactly the same. You can go back to the rubric and explain exactly why one scored one grade and one scored another grade. Students will know their expectations. We kind of said this just a minute ago. Prepares students for what is expected in the assignment beforehand, before they even start the assignment. They know what's being expected of them. They need to, and what they need to include in their submission. So the more detailed the rubric and instructions and checklists and so on, yes, we will talk about that as we progress, the more students can create a higher level of paper or project or presentation or whatever that they're submitting. A focused rubric will allow students to reach deeper into their knowledge base and research if they are paying attention to the rubric. There's no gotcha moments when you're grading with rubrics from the very beginning of the year, from the very first assignment in the class. There won't be any students experience that gotcha moment where their grade is just hammered on the first assignment because they missed something within the rubric or even the instructions. In other words, it forces the teacher to be completely clear and honest up front in what they're expecting from their students. And so students don't get that feeling or sense in the first assignment if they just missed something because it should be clarified from within the rubric. It also allows for students to do a self-assessment of their work before they submit it, if they will take that step. So because the students have that rubric beforehand, what the expectations are for their submission, they should be encouraged by the teacher, encouraged by the instructions for the assignment, to go through and do their own evaluation of their work based on the criterion and levels of proficiency within the rubric. Doesn't necessarily mean that if they were to grade themselves with the rubric, it will match exactly with what the teacher's grade will be of that assignment, but at least they will know that they have made an effort on every piece of what is expected for that assignment submission. It helps them to focus on skill building, the process of using rubrics, especially if the class has multiple opportunities for students to complete the same type of an assignment. That's what we're going to talk about in this section, specifically of the course. So let's say that there's 4 written essays throughout the course, and maybe there's a weekly discussion board that you use if you're teaching online, or a weekly journaling or something along that line. And the same rubric then would be used to evaluate each one of those successive submissions for that similar assignment. Students will learn then from their previous feedback that the rubric inherently offers in order to advance their essay writing skills, or whatever the assignment is, or thought-provoking discussion posts on the next assignment, next opportunity of that same type of assignment. And really, this is the main purpose of formative assessment and rubrics, is that they will build their skills as they continue through the same types of assignments and rubrics that go with that assignment through the course. This is where you're really going to see student growth. Rubrics allow for multiple paths to success. They allow students to focus on several different pieces of an assignment and can still be successful in the one criterion, maybe that where they have a natural strength in whatever that one is measuring. And then it allows them to focus maybe their efforts much stronger on a criterion that they're maybe weaker in order to be able to develop that skill area and then develop themselves as an all-around student for that type of assignment. And again, if you're using rubrics in multiple assignments in your course, that will develop their skill levels just that much more. Students benefit from good, consistent feedback. We've talked about this already. This is absolutely critical in the learning process, particularly for multiple assignments of the same type that we just talked about. When students can receive that feedback from a good rubric, and then it will help them learn the course content better by continuing to develop their accuracy in reaching the goals that are spelled out in that rubric. Then when they turn in the next assignment, they will again develop those skills. And that overall goal then is to develop their process or their learning ability to know the objectives of the course overall. So that good, consistent feedback from teachers is very critical for them. Rubrics also provide options in how students can show their learning. This is huge. This is huge. If you write a good rubric, this is so advantageous to students because the good rubric is targeting the actual components of the learning, not detailing out, well, the paper needs to be 5 pages. It needs to have a cover page. It needs to have graphics. Those are specific to the task that you are asking them to do, not to learn what the outcome is or objective is. And so as the components of the learning that the teacher makes for the objectives and the outcomes for the class, then the medium that the student chooses to show that learning has taken place becomes less important, therefore providing evidence to the teacher to allow for more variance in submission types. And so again, if you have a very well written rubric, it doesn't matter if me as a student, if I turn in a Prezi presentation, if I choose to write a paper, if I choose to create a video, if I choose to make a Glogster multimedia poster, whatever, the realm is open to me, so I can use my skill set in what I know how to do and still reach the objectives that are spelled out within the rubric. And so it just provides options for students to be able to submit different things. And it should not throw the teacher off at all, because the rubric is looking for different components, those more specific components of the depth of the learning that is being demonstrated, as opposed to basically checking off boxes that everything in the paper is there or whatever. Again, it provides for options in how the students can learn. So let's say, for example, an outcome for a history class is constructs an interpretation of events using information and perspectives in multiple sources, identifies consistencies and inconsistencies among various accounts. Well, as a student, I can show that lots of different ways. That's not tied to a paper or to a speech in front of the class or whatever. And so the student, again, can potentially show their learning. Yeah, they could write a paper, but again, they could create a video or maybe a screencast or maybe a Powtoon animation or build a multimedia interactive online poster we talked about. They could create a presentation of multiple types. It could be presented in class. It could be presented online. It could be just made available as a file. You could create a brochure, like a sales brochure or whatever, depending on what the assignment is. Maybe in geography or history, they could provide a Google Earth tour, a virtual tour of whatever the assignment is referring to. An infographic, maybe use Canva or some other tool to create an infographic or a graphic organizer within that tool. They could create a podcast. They could create a timeline. There are timeline generators online. They could create a game that everybody in the class can play and learn about that particular concept. Then maybe they could make a website or create a whole Pinterest board of the research that they've done for this particular topic. Or really, the list is endless in how students can demonstrate their learning if the objectives of the rubric are written very consistently and targeted for the learning and not the task at hand. And really, the bottom line here, what are we trying to do? We're trying to have students learn, right? Rubrics help students learn. Okay, there are many studies out there that show rubrics help students learn faster, with more detail, and to more depth. These studies include the processes of students creating or contributing to the rubrics used by their teachers. And so if students can contribute to that process of, if you have a format for them to contribute to the rubrics, that would be best. Especially if there are peer evaluated rubrics showing growth in peer evaluations, or they could emulate teacher evaluations in that process, certainly, if it's the same rubric. They can develop their problem-solving skills within the learning process, again, by that formative learning and that good, consistent feedback going on. And they can learn better through self-assessment activities for students. All of that, and really many more things, make it to where the use of rubrics helps students learn. And I'm hoping that you find that in your class as well.